Okay, hello everyone. Welcome back to War Thunder. We're continuing with the World War One talking. Um, with well, we've basically covered the last in the last War Thunder part. We had covered the origins of World War One and why it happened, basically. So now we're sort of moving on to just parts of World War One. Um, and I suppose War Thunder. There aren't any World War One tanks in War Thunder, so we may as well start talking about air combat. We may as well. Yeah, for air combat was really sort of it improved in leaps and bounds, sort of during throughout World War One. World War One was sort of like the introduction of because the aircraft had only been invented 15 years prior to well, at least the first powered flight of an aircraft was only 1903 at Kitty Hawk in America by the Wright brothers. So nobody really thought of the aircraft as something that would really take off, so to speak. Avoid the pun. But yeah, nobody really thought much of um, of the aircraft because nobody saw it as really much of a threat. They were biplanes that were just they were just biplanes that were slow. They couldn't really carry much. They weren't really very powerful. They weren't really able to hold any offensive weaponry. So nobody really saw they weren't capable of carrying any sort of appreciable amount of passengers. So nobody really thought of them as very useful at all. Um, so at the beginning of World War One, they were useless really. Um, people, the armies, if they had an air force, they only used the air force for spotters, really. Um, they were only for spotters or reconnaissance because they were unable to carry machine guns, and so really, if a friendly pilot came up against an enemy pilot in the air, they would there would be nothing more than a friendly wave. Knights of the air, as they were known. So nothing more would happen other than a friendly wave. There would be no shooting, maybe some cheeky hand gestures, but other than that, it was fairly nice. And so, an enemy spotter would be spotted. Oh, look, there's an enemy spotter plane. Oh, well, nothing we can do about it. Let's just wave at him, or do a cheeky gesture to him. And so, only useful as artillery spotters, reconnaissance planes for taking pictures. However, the Germans, obviously, we had to do something different, so we obviously had to weaponize the aircraft that we had. So we basically thought, well, there's enough space in here to fit something. I mean, we already have, a flare gun. Um, as part of our pilots, they have a flare gun to destroy the aircraft. Let's fit them with massive steel darts. Obviously in the boardrooms there must have been a dartboard. There were some people playing darts whilst this meeting was happening, and then it was like, we need to weaponize our planes, gentlemen. So what shall we do? And then, well, there are some people playing darts there. I suppose darts would be funny if we were to fit it. And then it's Hans, you're a genius. Get me some more giant metal darts. And so, well, okay. What are you planning to do? Well, let us just equip these with our pilots. A large metal dart. I mean, they were more sort of a metal ball with a giant spike on the end with some fins to sort of stabilize it as it drops. And it was just solid metal. Falling at terminal velocities, this will cause some considerable damage to a British Tommy if it hits. Their steel helmets will not save them. So it was, yeah, sure, we'll go with it. We'll have a go. So, of course, flying over the trench, the British were like, well, what is this? They are dropping things on us. And so, of course, they would be highly inaccurate. It would be more of a shower of just random metal darts. But, once a couple of Tommies had been hit and split straight down the center, they would start to get wary of aircraft flying overhead that weren't their own. And so, of course, the British, thinking this isn't cricket, we can't allow this. So, spotter aircraft that had a co-pilot, or well, the spotter, a two-man spotter aircraft. The spotter was equipped with a rifle, or with their revolver, and oh, there's an enemy aircraft spotted. Well, I have this rifle. It's better than nothing. I will just, you know, shoot with the rifle. So, popping out of the cockpit where the spotter was, he would start firing off rifle shots or pistol rounds at this enemy aircraft. Unlikely to do anything at all, really, but it was better than nothing. So, you know, there we go. So just started shooting rifles out of them. And so, of course, the Germans started adopting this, and so you would have these rifle battles happening in the air as these two aircraft just sort of flew around until their fuel is expended, and nothing really much would have happened. I mean, there may have been a few lucky shots into the engine which would, you know, damage the engine or shatter the propeller, but those would have been very, very, very rare shots. So really, air combat at that point really wasn't much better than when they were unarmed. And so then the British thought, well, why don't we equip a machine gun onto the front of our planes? Yeah, that's a great idea. We will have it so that the pilot can easily reach over from the controls, grab it, and machine gun any planes that is in front of them. However, they had forgotten that there's a massive goddamn propeller in front of the propeller, or in front of the engine, to actually pull the plane along. So what happened is that the British would see the enemy plane. Oh, there's an enemy plane. Rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. Oh, scheiße, my propeller is gone. Ah, how does that happen? Because the machine gun bullets would just rip through the propeller, you know, destroying the propeller, and therefore friendly fire, killing themselves before really being able to do any considerable damage to the enemy aircraft that they are engaging. So the British thought, well, this isn't working. What can we do? Well, metal usually ricochets bullets. Let's just fit some metal sheeting onto our propeller where the machine gun will hit, and then any shots that hits the propeller will just bounce harmlessly off. Oh yeah, that is a great idea. So they did that. They fitted the metal. The only problem is that they do not have control over the bullets once they leave the barrel. So the bullets hit the metal, they ricochet, often back into the pilot's face, friendly fire killing the pilot. So of course, that didn't work either. So the British were now back to the drawing board, and so the Germans, being the superior engineers, decided to actually address this problem, and created machines that would notice when the well, not really notice. They would time it. The bullets would be timed to go through the propeller of the aircraft, and there would be time to go through the propeller of the aircraft, but not actually damage the aircraft propeller, therefore allowing burst fire at these enemy aircraft as they are engaging, but yet also avoiding friendly fire killing the pilot or the aircraft propeller. So after a while of the RFC, the British, the Royal Flying Corps, the World War I equivalent of the Royal Air Force. So after a while of the Royal Flying Corps getting slapped around the face a bit by these Germans, they thought, how are they doing this? We must find out. And eventually they managed to bring down a Fokker or some other similar type aircraft that was equipped with these interrupter gears, and they were able to capture it intact because the pilot hadn't destroyed the aircraft. And so they studied it. They thought, this is fairly clever. We will use it for our own devices. And then, shortly, all RFC planes were equipped with these interrupter gear machine guns, therefore giving birth to the proper first ever single-seater fighter. And so, of course, then you get the whole duels in the air. However, there's more to it than just biplanes machine gunning each other for half an hour until something happens. Because biplanes with a single or twin mounted machine guns in front of the pilot are not the only designs around. You, of course, had the SE-5 biplane for the British, which had a Lewis machine gun mounted on the top wing of the aircraft. So the So the pilot would stand up whenever whenever he wanted to shoot at an enemy aircraft. He would either reach up with the machine gun, or he would just stand up and machine gun the aircraft that way. However, that meant that the pilot was not able to control the aircraft whilst he was standing up using this Lewis machine gun. So, of course, that isn't, that is an odd idea, shall we say, for the British. Then, of course, you had aircraft that had two or more pilots in them, which meant that they could have machine gun turrets. They would be a single, Vickers K Lewis gun, perhaps, mount on just on a spinning thing for the observer to machine gun any planes that came into his line of fire. So of course there's that. Then biplanes were not the only aircraft around. The French also had their own aircraft, and they didn't just have biplanes. They had monoplanes. Monoplane standing for ein, so the simple ein wing. So the French had their single winged aircraft, which at that time was unheard of. Mostly biplanes were the only things to have been used, so two wings. However, the French had their single winged aircraft, and so of course the Germans were not going to take this lying down. So of course the Germans came up with the Fokker Eindecker, so they had their own single winged aircraft in play to shoot up these biplanes and French monoplanes. So eventually monoplane fighters started shooting at each other. However, two wings were not the only thing in place. There were also three things in place, such as the Red Baron, as I'm sure everyone will have known, which was the German ace brought down by a RFC plane at the end of the war. But him and his flying circus, his own squadron, were just running riot around the RFC squadrons, and he was the German ace. And he was using German triplanes. They were using Fokker triplanes. I probably DR something or other, I'm not too sure. But so using his triplanes, he was flying around killing all of these RFC aircraft. And so three wings for now a thing. And of course the British wanted to have their own triplane, seeing how successful the Red Baron was in his own triplane. So they came up with the Fokker triplane, or not the Fokker, the Sopwith triplane, which was designed by the Sopwith aircraft company, and then they experimented with that, and I don't think it was much used in the war. The most successful English aircraft built during the war was the Sopwith Camel, being a particularly good British-made single-seated fighter, and that is the plane that most pilots would have used. But then again, you also had aircraft like the Sopwith Pup, which was just a sort of smaller version of the Sopwith Camel, with the Sopwith Camel being called because of the hump where the pilot's head would rest, and then the fuselage got smaller from there. So hence why it was called Camel. But then again, single-seater fighters or spotter planes with several seats were not the only aircraft in play. You also had, near the end of the war, you also had the bomber, like the Vickers Vimy, which was a large twin-engined medium bomber, which was, I'm not too sure whether it was used at the end of the war or not, but it was certainly used after the war, and it was the first real bomber, the first real bomber to ever have been used, and it had two machine gun turrets, and it also had the pilot, and it had two massive engines, and it could carry bombs, because bombs were really not used at all during World War One because these single-seater fighters just didn't have didn't have any real way of releasing the bombs once they had them on, and even if they could, then bombs just uh, they couldn't be particularly big bombs, so they would be pretty useless um, in the conflict because they couldn't do anything that artillery couldn't do better and quicker. So they would have bomb racks on the side of a few fighters, but other than that, bombs were pretty useless. So really, the only things that planes could do was machine gun the trenches. And so, yeah, the Vickers Vimy bomber was the was the optimum plane for bombing enemy fortifications when artillery couldn't do it. And that is that really. Yeah. However, planes weren't the only thing in the skies, were they? Nine. So the Germans also had their own interesting designs. Yeah, they had their Zeppelins, which was the first things to actually bomb the British homeland, because the British thought, it's taking place in France. They don't have any planes that have enough fuel to get from France or Germany to England. So they thought, we're perfectly safe. Then Germany came up with Zeppelins, and the thing about Zeppelins is that they're massive balloons filled with lighter than air gas, that could actually carry bomb loads, because they would have their little gondolas underneath their little gondolas underneath the hydrogen balloon, or whatever it is that was being used. And these gondolas could carry bombs, they could carry machine guns, and so they could be pretty deadly opponents. However, the thing about it is that although they were good at bombing things, they were massive, they were slow, they were easily puncturable, and had a habit of getting set on fire. So, of course, flying over Britain is all very well, dropping your bombs, but Britain wasn't idly just leaving their cities undefended. They have flak emplacements, so they had all of their anti-aircraft guns, and the anti-aircraft guns could easily get the range and hit these balloons after a while. So Zeppelins were useful, but not completely useful. Then, right at the end of the war, the Germans made the first ever plane bombing on Britain with their massive bomber that they had created. But the thing about it was that it was too little, too late. But had it not been too little, too late, then the anti-aircraft guns just couldn't keep up with these faster moving and much smaller targets to actually get them to hit. So they were they were pretty stumped by these big aircraft, because they also didn't have any real fighter defense either, because they didn't have any squadrons which were just sitting at home defending. Everything was in France, and so that's Britain wasn't exactly as safe as they thought with Zeppelins and these big aircraft. And I accidentally just crashed into a plane there, into that Dornier. Whoops. But yeah, that's basically air combat. It was pretty interesting. I mean, the planes didn't really go any faster than 90 miles an hour, really. So it's like driving along a motorway is the sort of speed that they were traveling at. So yeah, but it was a thing that was unheard of. So World War One really was a first for lots of things, like tanks, the land ships, actual planes, because planes. After that, it was shown that planes could actually be used for something other than spotting. They could actually be. After the war, it was proven that planes could be a viable method of transporting people, things like that. So, yeah, I think I'll go and land my biplane. I sort of don't have control anymore. I can't actually roll this thing anymore. I can pitch up and down, and I can use the rudder, but I can't actually use the ailerons. They're sort of destroyed. I sort of accidentally crashed into a Dornier, which I wasn't trying to do. Um, so yeah, that's a problem. But still, also one other thing is that in World War One, pilots weren't actually equipped with parachutes because oh yeah, of course they weren't. I forgot about that. Yeah, so they sort of, because inside the cockpit they didn't really have enough room for this massive parachute. So if an aircraft was shot down, you sort of had to hope that you could have enough skill to actually land this crippled aircraft and walk away, because if not, you would spiral out of control, and of course you can't bail out, because if you bail out, you'll just die anyway. So it was either bail out and die hitting the ground, or just stick in your aircraft, hope that you can try and land it, and if not, well, you're dead. So, yeah. But then eventually parachutes were starting to get used, but that was later on into the war. The early phases of air combat, if you were shot down, you just sort of had to hope that you could land it. And of course, pilots were told to destroy their aircraft so that the enemy couldn't get their hands on it. So, yeah, there's that. Is there anything else that we have missed? I can't think of anything else that we've missed. There's, well, you know, anti-aircraft would have taken their toll on aircraft, but the anti-aircraft was more sort of machine guns, or big, sort of 37 sort of millimeter anti-aircraft. So, yeah, the anti-aircraft was in place, so planes weren't exactly being ignored. They would try and shoot down the spotters for artillery and, you know, the other and the reconnaissance planes, but yeah. Other than that, there wasn't actually particularly much more air combat really happening. Air combat's different now because of, you know, new laser guided technology and, you know, heat-seeking missiles and things like that. Whoa, okay. What? What has happened? My plane crashed into a building. It sort of just span around a bit and then just sort of kept from flying like nothing happened. I'm pretty sure my plane would be dead. It's only a biplane. I'm pretty sure I would be dead, but no. I survived a lot longer than I should have done. Well, you should be lucky. I mean, at least your planes have parachutes when you bail out. Yeah, I just sort of didn't have enough time to bail out. I was too low. I was very low to the ground. I was strafing things. Hence why I hit the building. But still, I suppose you could say that these planes that I'm flying, even though they're not the exact planes, they are in the colours of the World War One planes. So the Germans did have those funny camouflages, like those weird hexagon things. I think more planes should have those camouflages. They looked amazing. Not too sure how effective they were, but they certainly did look amazing. I would have loved to have flown one of those planes with that camouflage on. So let's finish this battle. You got a 109E, you have KI-10. Oh, a Mark IV Hurricane. I'm gonna get myself a 109. Come hither. Get shot down by this albatross. Or Fokker. I think this is actually a Fokker. Not too sure. I haven't seen these skins for so long. It's a massive enemy aircraft around here. Oh, critical hit. Damage of tail. Yeah, that's right. Your tail's been damaged. What are you gonna do? I'm a biplane. Shooting at you with machine guns. Yeah, that's right. I'm getting shot at myself, but oh, there you go. That's hit me. Oh, that's bad. I've lost my elevators, which makes aiming at this 109 impossible. No, up. No, buildings. Oh dear, those are some buildings. Oh, best squad, mate. That's got it. Fifth on team. researched nothing because it's only biplanes. Yeah, but I'll thank you for watching, and goodbye.